and foremost with Castlevania Dracula X for the PSP. I don't know if we have a video to introduce this, Rance, so let's go ahead and let's check out the video intro for Castlevania Dracula X, a new title by Konami for the PSP. All right, Castlevania, the Dracula X Chronicles for PSP. This is actually a remake of a Castlevania game that came out many years ago. And, of course, Iga-san decided that he wanted to give Castlevania 3D a different treatment because if you remember, a lot of the other 3D Castlevania games ended up being less than stellar. The most notable, the N64 Castlevania, which had you picking up sticks of dynamite and carrying it in some obscure 3D world around, and I don't even know if Dracula was in that shit.
It was rubbish.
Yeah, it was bad, dude. I remember Ed playing that one and like crying at certain portions of the game. But here's how it's gonna break down. First and foremost, what you need to know is that this game does not have the type of gameplay that you see in Symphony of the Night, that you see in the DS versions of Castlevania. This truly is an old school Castlevania brought back to life in 3D with new voice acting, with some new cutscenes, etc. So it is not even a retelling of the story. It's imagine, kind of like how Cliffy said the other day, it's sort of like Star Wars being remastered for the 21st century. Same sort of thing. So you're going to find that your air control, what you can actually do in the game, is very much limited to the way that the original Castlevanias were back in the day. It wasn't until we got Symphony of the Night where suddenly, you know, the movement became much better. But what you're dealing with here is you're dealing with 3D character models, 3D monsters on 2D, 3D hybrid backgrounds. So it actually graphically is pretty nice. And we're going to go through some of these categories here really quickly, and I'll explain each one. So graphics from me is going to get an 8. And the reason I gave it an 8, which is actually rather high on my scale, is quite frankly because they have taken a game and they've improved on it significantly. But what's also important is that it looks really good on the PSP. And as we go on to games like Manhunt, which we're going to talk about next, you're going to find out that the PSP can still produce some pretty crappy graphics. So although there is moments where, yeah, this looks a little blocky here, or maybe the models aren't as fleshed out, it actually is really well done for a game that was once 2D and then was retranslated into a 3D environment. Sound is by far the best part about this game. I love the old school Castlevania soundtrack remixed to have a more orchestrated, upbeat soundtrack. So you are going to recognize nearly every single song from one Castlevania or another if you have been a longtime fan of the series. But why does it lose out on a few points? The voice acting is rather dull and rather bland, and so I really felt like it only excelled in music. Gameplay, I gave a 7. And this game is difficult, you guys, and if you've read some of the reviews online, you will hear some people have said, this game is so difficult I can't even get past the first boss. Well, to those guys I say, go fucking grab yourself an 8-bit Nintendo and go back to school, bitches, because this is not any more difficult than the original Castlevania, than Castlevania 3, than Castlevania 4 for the Super Nintendo. It's not that hard. It's just got that old school difficulty feel. And you know what I'm talking about, you guys? You know that,
you need to point out that it's much more difficult than like the Symphony of the Nights and the DS ones.
Oh, absolutely.
Kids have gotten used to lately.
But in the same respect that Castlevania 1 was difficult. That game was hard as hell. But I think that it also lends itself to the time period. Games back then were just inherently more difficult. So yes, this game is difficult, but it's not so difficult that you're not not going to be able to beat it. It just means that you might spend a few extra, chances trying to defeat a boss or get past a certain area. But the game in its essence is short. I was able to beat the game in probably about 5 or 6 hours all the way through. And while there is some replayability, I'm going to get to that in my fun cycle. Fun cycle for me, guys, is a 6. But for a lot of you that have never had a chance to experience this Castlevania game or Symphony of the Night, this game gets a 9. And the reason being is that this game not only has unlockables for the original game, but it also allows you to play through the game with alternate characters, as you're seeing right here. Here's one of the alternate characters that you could play as, one of the chicks. Additionally, it's got the full version of Symphony of the Night in it. So if you've never had the chance to experience Symphony of the Night, you're really getting 3 games in one if you buy this. The problem with that, the games aren't unlocked right away for us. So you've got to play through Castlevania X, the original Rondo of Blood storyline, in order to unlock Symphony of the Night, the original 2D version, and some of these extra characters. But it is an added bonus. So despite that the original gameplay is short and doesn't give you that much to basically, I don't even know what word I'm looking for, to justify the $40 purchase or the $30 purchase you're going to make. But if you've never played Symphony of the Night, having that on a portable system, that's actually a big deal. Yes, I'm aware that if you own a PS3, you can download Symphony of the Night and then put it onto your PSP, but this is just another way to have 3 games in one. So overall, I'm going to give this one a 72%. And really, I'm only going to suggest this game to guys that are either diehard Castlevania fans or guys that have never played Symphony of the Night. Because even though the main game will last about 5 or 6 hours, playing Symphony of the Night can last you 20 to 40 hours. The game is massive and it's huge and it's all there for you. Now, you don't normally go out and rent PSP games, so that's the other problem. So if you're looking to get this one or if you've been unsure about maybe checking it out, I would say Christmas is coming up. You better send a letter to Santa, guys, and get it. Yeah, it's a stocking stuffer. But again, I don't think, even if you're like a diehard DS Castlevania or Symphony of the Night fan, there's not going to be anything that's really going to trip your trigger unless you've never played Symphony of the Night. And with that being said, that pretty much is my quick review of Castlevania Dracula X. So 72% is what it gets from me, guys. And I don't know, Forrest, you got any questions about that one, or was that pretty straightforward?
Move on to the next one.
All right, there you go. That means straightforward. Now the next